Hi everyone, I'm going to be reading The Last Airbender. It's an Avatar book. Okay, I'll tell you a bit about what the blurb says on the back. Power was once balanced among 4 great nations: the Water Tribes, the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation and the Air Nomads. Leaders of each nation were able to bend their native elements. Only the Avatar, the bridge between the human and spirit worlds, could bend all 4 elements and maintain world order. 100 years ago, the Avatar disappeared. Just as the Fire Nation gained great power from a passing comet and attacked the other nations, all hope was lost, until the arrival of Aang, a 13-year-old airbender who reveals himself to be the new Avatar. Can he save the world from the Fire Nation, or is it too late? The prologue. Water, earth, fire, air. Each element defines a great nation. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days, about a time of peace when the Avatar kept balance among the 4 nations: the Water Tribes, the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation and the Air Nomads. But all that changed when the comet came. It blazed across the sky and gave the firebenders a moment of great power. And during that moment, the Fire Nation attacked. They started a terrible war, a war that continues to this day. Only the Avatar, master of all 4 elements and the bridge to the spirit world, could stop the ruthless firebenders. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years have passed since the Avatar disappeared. The Fire Nation has learnt to make metal machines of war, and they are nearing victory. My name is Katara. I am a waterbender from the Southern Water Tribe. 2 years ago, my father and the other men of my tribe journeyed to the Earth Kingdom to help fight against the Fire Nation. My father left me and my brother to look after our tribe. Most people believe that the Avatar was never reborn into the Air Nomads as was supposed to happen, and that the cycle of the Avatar has been broken forever. But I haven't lost hope. I still believe that somehow the Avatar will return to save the world. Chapter 1. Sunlight glinted off an endless expanse of ice dotted with towering glaciers of white. Cutting through the frozen plain, a river wended its way, twisting and flowing, creating movement in the otherwise still landscape. A small paddle boat carrying 2 passengers drifted to shore. A 17-year-old boy hopped out and bent down to tie the craft to a piece of ice that jutted out of the frozen shore. A 15-year-old girl who had been seated beside him climbed out and stood at the water's edge. She held her hands over the rushing river and began to concentrate. Thoughts of all that had happened to her and her people flooded her mind. One image appeared and crowded out all the others. It was the kind face of her mother. She felt a rush of warmth and love, though it was tinged with anger and sadness. Focusing on the positive feelings, the girl rotated and lifted her hands. A small amount of water bubbled, then rose from the river and hovered in the air in front of her. Flexing her fingers, she rounded the water into the shape of a sphere. When the girl turned and stepped away from the river's edge, the water moved with her, as if she were carrying it in an invisible container. She turned toward the boy, and the ball of water followed her movement. It now hovered directly above his head. Taking a step forward, the girl stumbled on the uneven ice. As she moved her hands to regain her balance, she lost control of the water, which came splashing down onto the boy's head. "I'm sorry, Sokka," cried the girl. unable to hold back a small giggle as he tried to chase his sister around on the ice. "I thought about Mum that time," the girl said, changing direction to stay a few steps ahead of him. "And it worked better. Isn't that strange?" "Yeah, I guess so, Katara," the boy grumbled, slowly slowing down. "Whatever. Just stop doing that water stuff around me. It always ends up with me getting wet." "It's called water bending," Katara said, coming to a stop. "I know what it's called," Sokka shot back. "Just quit doing it over my head." Reaching back into the boat, Sokka pulled out a sphere. He stepped quietly around the edge of an ice mountain, gripping the weapon tightly. Katara followed a few steps behind. Sokka spotted something in the ice just ahead. Kneeling down, he ran his hand along the edge of a series of tracks in the dusting of snow that covered the ice. "It's a tiger seal," he said to his sister. "Are you sure?" Katara asked. Sokka nodded. Then he quickly started to follow the tracks. Katara hurried to keep up with her brother. A few minutes later, they stepped through a narrow gap between two glaciers and stared at a vast field of ice, flat, featureless, and eerily quiet. Sokka, are we lost?" Katara asked, looking out at the endless stretch of nothingness. "I did everything Dad said to do," Sokka replied. He was frustrated, but not ready to admit that the two were lost. "There's no way we should be." "Sokka, wait!" Katara said, grabbing her brother's arm. "What is it, Katara?" Sokka asked, sensing her tension. Katara pointed down at the ice. A white glow radiated from deep below the surface. Sokka looked down and immediately reached into his backpack, pulling out a boomerang. Kneeling, he peered into the glowing ice. "Something's under there," he said. He raised his boomerang and slammed its edge down onto the ice. Nothing happened. He whacked the ice again. Still nothing. Striking the ice for the third time, Sokka heard an unmistakable cracking sound. The ice beneath his feet began to spiderweb in every direction. The cracks grew longer and wider, opening gaping holes in the ice. "It's a cave-in," he shouted to Katara. "Move away from the cracks." The two backed away and watched from a safe distance as a huge ball of ice rose from under the surface and emerged from a large opening. The smooth, clear sphere finally stopped moving. The ice plane grew silent once again. Katara stepped forward. "We shouldn't touch it," Sokka said anxiously. "But look," Katara insisted, pointing. "There's someone in there. It looks like a boy. Who is he? Is he alive?" "This could be a Fire Nation trap," Sokka pointed out, slipping his boomerang into his pack and grabbing Katara's hand. "Let's get back to the village." "We can't just leave him, Sokka," Katara cried. Sokka shrugged. "He's probably dead anyway." Katara snatched a boomerang from her brother's pack and ran towards a giant ice ball. "Wait! Don't!" Sokka cried. Ignoring her brother, Katara smacked the huge ball of ice with the edge of the boomerang. "There could be a lot of built-up pressure inside that thing," Sokka insisted. Katara struck the sphere again. Sokka sighed deeply and shook his head. Since when did his sister ever listen to him anyway? "Katara, you don't know what might..." A powerful blast of air shot from a crack in the sphere, blowing Katara back and across the ice. She slammed into Sokka and the two skidded to a stop. "Happen," Sokka finished as he untangled himself from his sister. The crack Katara had opened expanded and a blinding light shot high into the sky, turning the whole world white. Sokka and Katara shielded their eyes, trying in vain to see what was going on. The light faded, revealing that the sphere had split in half, leaving two motionless figures sprawled out on the ice. The boy Katara had seen inside it was wrapped in a cloak. Beside him lay a huge animal covered in thick white fur. Katara kneeled down next to the boy, who appeared to be about 13 years old. His head was shaved completely bald and covered by a blue tattoo in the shape of an arrow. Katara leaned in close just as the boy opened his eyes. "Is he breathing?" Sokka asked. "And did you see that light shoot into the sky? What was all that about?" Katara smiled at the boy. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The boy squinted up at her but remained silent. "He's exhausted," Sokka, Katara said, realising that this was no place for a conversation. "We need to get him back to the village." Sokka walked up to the big furry creature and started poking the beast. "What is this thing?" he wondered out loud. An enormous animal casually lifted his huge paddle-like tail and pinned Sokka beneath it. "Help!" he cried, flailing his arms from underneath the tail. "I'm being attacked!" Katara stood up and spun around quickly, wondering how she could possibly battle this enormous beast. Then Sokka easily crawled out from under the tail. The animal made no attempt to stop him. "False alarm," Sokka said, standing up and brushing the ice and white fur from his jacket. "Everything's under control." Katara turned back to the boy and helped him to his feet. "Hold my hand," she said gently. "You'll be okay." The boy fell into her arms unconscious. "Sokka, help me get him back to the boat," she said. They retraced their steps and carried the unconscious boy back to their boat. Sokka paddled quickly down the river towards their village. Glancing over his shoulder, he noticed the big white animal following them along the shoreline. A short time later, they arrived at their village, a small collection of igloos nestled together at the bottom of an ice valley. Carrying the boy, they brought him to their grandmother's igloo. She helped them bring the boy inside and get him comfortably settled. As their grandmother attended to the boy, Sokka ran off to check on the tribe's children. This was one of the responsibilities his father had left him when he went off with the other men of the tribe to fight against the Fire Nation. "He's all right," Katara's grandmother said when Sokka returned. She signalled for them to step outside. "He just needs some rest." Katara and Sokka stepped out of the igloo and the older woman looked at her granddaughter. "Where exactly did you find him, Katara?" she asked. "By a path near the big glaciers," Katara replied. "He was buried in the ice." Her grandmother turned away and wrinkled, weather-beaten face creased in a thought. "What's wrong, Grandma?" Katara asked, wondering if saving the boy could have possibly been the wrong thing to do. Grandma's expression softened. "Nothing's wrong, Katara," she said. "Go and keep an eye on the boy so he's not alone when he awakens." Katara nodded and slipped back into the igloo. To her surprise, the boy was awake, standing up and putting on his shirt. She stared in amazement at the intricate pattern of tattoos that ran down from his head and across his back and his arms. His body was thin but muscular. When the boy put on his shirt and cloak, he noticed Katara. "How did you get all the way out here?" she asked. "This village is pretty far away from the rest of the world." "I ran away from home," the boy stated flatly. "It wasn't a very smart thing to do. I was just upset." Katara thought about all she had faced since the war began and how many times she wished that she could have simply run away. "I get like that too," she said. "Thanks for saving me," the boy said, smiling for the first time. "Just lucky," Katara admitted. The boy sighed deeply. "I probably should get home," he said, wrapping his cloak around him. "They'll all be worried." "So you're going home?" Katara asked. "Then you're not still upset?" "Not as much as I was," the boy explained, picking up a wooden staff that was as tall as he was. He noticed Katara fidgeting with the necklace that hung around her neck. Katara blushed as the boy reached out and touched the carved wooden necklace. "It's my mum's." she said softly. She gave it to me. You're lucky to have family, the cloaked boy said with a touch of sadness in his voice. She passed away, Katara said. Oh, sorry, the boy said, feeling uncomfortable. But you're right, Katara added quickly. I was lucky. The boy nodded, then suddenly seemed worried. Your animal, Katara began. Appa is his name, the boy explained. You don't have to worry, she continued. He's just at the edge of the village near the stream. He's fine. He's very gentle. I should go, the boy said. Just then Sokka rushed into the igloo, leading a group of village children. His face was flushed and his eyes were wide with fear. The Fire Nation's here, he said tersely, and they bought their war machines. Okay. I'll read the next chapter 2 tomorrow.